Aloha, namaste. This is Alexis Cox with Radha Home Yoga, and I have your forecast for the full moon coming up on December 22nd and the winter solstice, which is coming tomorrow, the 21st. And where we're at right now is it's the 20th, and we have the moon in Taurus. The moon is exalted in Taurus, so it's where we generally feel the most comfort, the most stability, and the most sort of at peace, harmonizing with others, grounded in our hands-on duties in the world, and also in pleasure and enjoyment and food and sex and just reveling in life's pleasures, rolling around in the grass like a happy cow. The moon, though, is receiving a couple drishtis, a couple energetic glances, and one of them is from Mars. So the planet Mars has a special drishti, or special glance it gives when the planet is 4 houses away. And this one is moving into very close degrees in time for the solstice. So today, the 20th, we have the Mars drishti, but the moon is at very early degrees Taurus. And as it moves through Taurus towards the end of it, and in direct line with Mars, which is at 29 degrees in Aquarius, we'll see that we'll start to feel that energy sort of raising within us. This is an energy of intensity, perhaps anger, maybe a short fuse, maybe a capacity to really get some things done too. That drive we feel within us that makes us impatient also makes us just, cut through the crap and get stuff done. So it can be a good time to finish whatever last minute things you need to do. And before we move into this, holiday weekend, and many people are probably getting off work and children are off school, and all the different things people do over the holidays. So it's a time where you have to be kind of careful of your impatience, especially when you're out and about dealing with people, but also a time where you can kind of pull through that final hour and get your stuff done. The solstice is at 2:22 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow, the 21st, and so we're going to see, and by the time this gets up, it might already be the 21st, I don't know, but we're going to see that the moon will be at 24 degrees at the end of Taurus in the sign, or the nakshatra of Mrigashira at that point. And again, Mars is at 29 degrees, so it'll just move into it even more. At this moment, today, on Thursday, we have a closer drishti across the way from Jupiter and Mercury. Jupiter and Mercury are only a degree apart in the sky right now, and they'll be exact degrees tomorrow during the solstice. So we see that our capacity to communicate and our discernment is being very affected by our deeper wisdom or our beliefs and ideals. So while we might have that rush of anger, irritation, or short fuse, we also have that capacity to tap into our higher wisdom and what lesson we might be learning in that situation, and also even what lesson we might want to impart to others from that experience. So it gives us a little bit of a chance to redeem ourselves and to really reflect on what the purpose is of what we're doing or saying, what we really believe in all of this. The sun's shifting a little, so I'll move out of the light so it's not a glare. When Mercury is, and I talked about this in the last few videos, when Mercury is in Scorpio, we can be a little bit controlling with our speech. We can feel kind of emotional, take things personally, and really want to get the other person to do what we want. There's that controlling nature of Scorpio. It's very emotional, very passionate, very fiery, and watery. So having Jupiter so close to Mercury can cause us to just take some reflection and not use our speech just for our own selfish means, but perhaps really try to draw a bigger conclusion, try to draw something larger from it. Now, of course, we, especially if we don't necessarily have Mercury and great intelligence in our natal chart, we might take that same controlling thing that we might do with one other person and bring it onto the bigger stage where we're trying to convince other people of our ideal or our belief. And so it can go in that direction as well. In general, when planets are really close to each other, they sort of take up each other's room. So even if they're friendly, they might feel annoyed by the proximity of the other planet. So the energies might feel kind of, stuck with each other. And Jupiter and Mercury are not friendly here. So you see that there's some push and pull here between discernment and facts and figures and wanting to communicate what we think, and then also having those deeper beliefs and ideals and teachings. And Jupiter is in very good intelligence in Scorpio, so our higher belief systems might actually be operating at a better capacity, a better intelligence than our discernment, than that buddhi, that discrimination that we have in our mind. To sort of add to this whole picture, and these are all, these two drishtis of the Jupiter and Mercury, and then also the one from Mars, are all happening today, the 20th, and into tomorrow, into the solstice on the 22nd. By the time the full moon hits, the 21st, the solstice is the 21st. By the time the full moon hits on the 22nd, we're going to see that those drishtis fade out. The Jupiter-Mercury one is at 15 degrees, so the moon is moving into that today, into this evening, on the 20th, and then on the 21st, we'll start moving away from that drishti more towards the Mars drishti, more towards that sort of fiery, angry energy. And then as we shift into the morning hours of the 22nd, none of those will really be applicable, although the Mars one at 29 degrees will still carry some weight in the early degrees of Gemini. So we have another alignment that is going to be for longer, so not just for today and tomorrow, but through the full moon, and it's actually heating up slowly over the next couple weeks. So this is the Sun and Saturn. They have come together in the sky in sidereal Sagittarius. So what we see here is that, first of all, Saturn is what we call combust. When a planet is right by the sun, it is sort of burned up by the sun's rays. The sun is so hot and so powerful that it feels frustrating to that planet. Like I said before, planets don't love being next to each other, but planets really don't love being next to the sun because it's so bright and overpowering, and it has a tendency to diminish the feeling of that planetary energy. So in Saturn's case, this is our capacity to work hard, our humility. It's where we feel our fear. It's where we feel depression even, sadness, grief, and it's where we feel alone. So when the sun moves really close to Saturn, we have a tendency to feel this sort of, kind of like a Cinderella complex. Like we're so overworked, we're not appreciated, we're so lonely, we're so, it's a really woe is me kind of feeling. If you see that in someone's natal chart, you're really going to see that person feels constantly put upon. In the sky, it's going to be something that's affecting everyone. So all that we've culminated through this past, 7 or 8 months, all that we've been through, the weight of that starting to feel on our shoulders, all the hard work we've had to do. So many people have had to pull out parts of themselves they didn't even know existed to just get through this year. And the weight of all that can really start to feel on our shoulders. And instead of taking it and just doing it like we've been doing, we might start to feel kind of like, man, so hard, and what's the point? Or, no, we're underappreciated. And really, that feeling can be depressing and also even sort of demotivating, although it can possibly sort of force you to just, keep on keeping on because things have gotten that hard or that challenging and you don't really have a choice. But the lack of joy over the work you're doing will definitely be felt. And the fact that maybe you feel overworked, overburdened at this time. And again, that's going to be increasing even more as the sun moves closer to it. Right now, Saturn is at 16 degrees and the sun's at 5 degrees Sagittarius. So it's going to be moving in the next couple weeks. In the next week, you'll feel that increase and then even more. So just something to bear with, something to recognize. The thing I love about astrology is that it's when you know what's happening, when you know what's going on, and you know when something is sort of a universal thing or something everyone's dealing with, or you know when something's more personal, it gives perspective. It's really what it does. It gives perspective. It gives a capacity to acknowledge that that's happening, that there'll be another day, a different shift, something new we'll be feeling the next, few weeks later, that it will go away, that things are temporary. And it also gives you that capacity to tap into your higher wisdom and tap into your higher discernment and make different choices, so that instead of really sinkering into that, sinkering, I like that word, it's a new word, into that sort of Cinderella feeling, you can make a choice to try to serve more or enjoy more, or not just do work that is responsibility oriented. Maybe make some time for yourself to do something you really love, or make some time to help somebody who's more put upon than you or having a harder time than you. So there's just choices you can make when you have the knowledge and when you have the power. So that's what I really appreciate about this ancient science. So moving into the full moon, well, first of all, I'd just like to say the solstice itself is a time when we're coming to the darkest time of year, right? This is the least amount of sunlight is at 2:22 p.m. Pacific time, and December 21st is sort of the nadir of light. And that means that our power, our sun, our authority, our sense of leadership, our higher sense in this world, that light's just moving in on me, that power and authority is just moving in on me, is really at its lowest point. And we are going to move up from here. We're going to grow. The light will grow as we continue on from this point, from December 21st forward. So even though light will still be low for many months, and it'll still be dark, and it'll still be cold, and it'll still be winter in many environments, it will be growing. It'll have an optimism about it, a growth and expansion, as opposed to a sinking. So those are two qualities we look at with the moon a lot. When the moon is waxing, it has a hopefulness. It has something that's growing. Even if it's close to the new moon and it's still dark, it's growing. Whereas when it's past the full moon, it's waning, even if it's close to the full moon and still bright. So it's sort of a different, rather than just thinking of the cold, the dark, the winter, we realize that it's growing. Our power, our authority, our soul consciousness, our connection to our soul, and our capacity to lead in this world will all start to be expanding after this time tomorrow. And it's also very important because it marks our big seasonal shifts. It's important because it demarcates our year. And I've spent much of my life in warm places or environments that don't necessarily have massive weather shifts. So it can be hard when you're in one of those places like Hawaii or Southern California, where you're not feeling the seasons as much as people might be in, say, New England. You don't necessarily understand as much, but people in New England probably understand pretty well when those leaves start to fall, your whole body starts to shed. Everything is shedding. The environment around you is shedding. And then as it gets really cold into winter, you start to hunker down and feel like hibernating. So these are shifts that whether you live somewhere with seasons or not, your body and your mind and your connection is still experiencing. We still go through this cycle of shedding, releasing, and renewing. So it's something to honor. And there's many different ways you can honor the solstice. Just simple meditation, prayer, light a candle, sit in front of, whatever altar space you create for yourself, and just allow yourself to take that time to honor the seasons within, as well as the seasons outside of us. And we get very inundated with the shopping and the Christmas and the Santa and the other stuff, but all of this began around the solstice. All of the holidays, all of the things that are gathered around this time of year come from the fact that the sun comes to its low point and then gets birthed again, and is born in there's some mythology. I'm more familiar with the Vedic mythology, but there's some mythology about like the Holly King from ancient Western cultures, pagan cultures, where the king is born at this time. The bright king, the new king, is born at this time of year, and it's the sun. The sun is that king. So this is a powerful time of year for people of all different cultures, all different religions, all different spiritual practices, and all different mythologies and stories and philosophies. So the full moon that is going to be coming up in the morning on the 22nd, it's going to be 9:48 a.m. here in California and Pacific time, and it is in the early degrees of Gemini in a nakshatra called Ardra. Ardra is on an axis with a nakshatra called Mula, which I spoke about in a write-up on when the sun first moved into Sagittarius. Mula and Ardra mark an axis in the sky that's very intense. It's very, it has a chaos to it, and it has a stormy quality, the chaos of the storm that sort of destructs and breaks and throws everything into upheaval, so that of course it can be renewed and made again whole. The next nakshatra in Gemini, at the end of Gemini, is called Purnavasu, and it's the return of the light. So it shows sort of the positive growth that can come out of this destruction. But the full moon is in the destructive quality. Ardra is represented by a teardrop. It is the, in the Vedic mythology, it's the place where the creator gets literally shot down out of the sky. And early creation that was meant to be so magical and so mystical and so perfect gets shot down with it. And instead we have a much more tumultuous growth and creation. We have creation that comes ridden with strife, disease, natural calamities, and this kind of thing. So it's a story of our human error in many ways, and our human fallibility that came out of this early error, early mistakes that were made. So it might not be the most pleasant of full moons. It is in the sign of Gemini, which is a generally practical and intellectual sign. But the ruler of Gemini, Mercury, is again in Scorpio right now, which is pretty emotional and pretty passionate and pretty fiery. So we are looking at a full moon that might make us have to have some intellectual, some discriminatory explosion or storm, that we might have to really blow up our old ways of thinking, or whatever facts and figures we really believe in, or we really want to be true, or we want to because most people don't have a very, very good grasp of objectivity when it comes to facts, when it comes to taking in information. Most of us really want it to be a certain way. We have planets before our moon and after our moon that help color that, and joining our moon. And then our Mercury, our actual discrimination, is in different signs. There's very few that actually give you that quality of pure discrimination. And so as a result, we often hear what we want to hear, and funnel everything through our vision of right and wrong, and then also put that back out into the world when we speak, or when we write, or however we get out our information to the world. So this is a time when we might have to really reflect on all of that. With Jupiter and Mercury together in Scorpio, we've already been doing some of that work. We've been really self-reflecting, and perhaps starting by blaming or starting by blowing up our relationships with others, but really in the process reflecting on what we personally are afraid of and need to look at in our own shadow self, in our own deep abysses of right and wrong. And the facts and figures that help cause us to feel so much. I mean, just think when you receive information and you think it's one way, you have only this much of the information, you just explode, or you get so upset hearing about it. And then you find out a little bit more, and it's like it totally changes the perspective. Well, that's kind of where we're at now. And it's a lot. We've been through a lot, and it's not stopping. And coming into the holidays, it can be challenging because we're forced to deal with our family, which is basically our most potent triggers. We any relationship issues we might have outside of our families with friends or partners or coworkers, they all pretty much come from that seed of the family challenge. Whatever we dealt with when we were children is what we're carrying into our future, and what we're carrying into our current relationships. So at the holiday time, a lot of people tend to see their families, and so it's of course the most fiery time when you really can be set off easily. So it's a time for self-care. It's a time to really reflect on what you want in the world, not what you don't want. What you do want to build for yourself, for a community, for everybody. How do we want to go forward? How do we want to make this a better place to be? How do we want to make ourselves better humans? Not focusing so much on what has not worked, or even people that have not worked in our lives. It's more important to move forward than to stay sort of stuck in the past. And we might have to separate ourselves from people. We might have to keep distance from those that we can't grow with, but we can be less explosive about that, or we can choose to make that a calm exit. Whatever we blow up, it usually is ourselves that ends up getting the most pain from it, the most suffering from it. So the most we can kind of just say, okay, that is what it is, and I'm walking this way, and this is what I see. And one of the practices I love to do periodically, but especially at a big time like a solstice, and especially after this year, is to do some vision boarding. So it's a great time to kind of collect pictures or images or ideas of what you want, or you can even journal what you want to create in the new year, and start the practice of putting that forward so that you can start off 2019 with a totally different mindset and direction that is not holding you back in the past, but is moving you forward in the future. Because everything that's happened this last year, as intense as it's been, as hard as it's been, it blew up something that wasn't working. We might not have wanted to blow it up. We might not have been ready to blow it up. We might not have been ready to do all the steps that we needed to do. We might find ourselves really feeling like put upon, as that Saturn-Sun conjunction will show. But in the end, it's moving us closer to where we need to be. And that is what we're all here for. So as unpleasant as it might be at times, it's growth. And growth is often pretty gnarly. So I hope that you have a blessed full moon and winter solstice, and whatever that looks like for you, and holidays, Christmas, into the new year, and that this is the time for your evolution, the time for your change. Thank you. Aloha. Namaste.